Welcome back. This is the podcast, It's Not Easy Being Green, episode 4, the sit down with Gina Arena, as I like to call her, Somer's sweetheart. I'm your host, Dominique, and we have Eddie, our producer, behind the cameras. I am beyond excited and honored to introduce our guest for today's podcast, Gina Arena.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Gina is running for the New York State Senate seat in District 40 against the incumbent Peter Harcum. Gina was born and raised in Westchester, grew up in Bedford, then Pound Ridge and Vista. She is a resident of Somers, where she has raised her family, 8 children, and has felt compelled more than ever to preserve the values of society and bring about the right change. She is running on the ticket. If we want to change Albany, we need to change who we send there. I love that. I personally have come to know Gina due to her support in fighting the Mahopac lithium battery facility. Gina has been at the meetings and the public hearing at the Carmel Town Board. She has participated in our rallies and has been vocal in her opposition to the battery facility. More specifically, she has expressed and made it clear that home rule must be protected. She has written an opinion piece in Low HUD on this topic. I understand your values were instilled by your father, Ray.
Yep.
And that throughout your life, you've always been involved in community activism, specifically with the Girl Scouts.
Yes.
Now, in the past 8 years or so, what has made you want to pursue public service and throw your hat into the political ring?
Quite a few things that I'm finding have put me in this place. As most know, I ran for county legislator in Westchester twice. Came very close to winning, and last year, or 2 years ago, decided to try my hand at state senate because my numbers looked good and I had good name recognition. So I put myself out there and gave it a shot, and I did actually very, very well. I had 47% of the vote. 3 more points, I would have hit the 50% mark. So this time around, the opportunity came up again, and I said, you know what? I did good. I'm gonna try this again because New Yorkers need change. And after the things that I learned the last time I ran, when I first started running, it started out as for my family because I have 8 children, and I felt they weren't able to afford to stay in this area like my husband and I were, and I was very concerned about that. And now I've got 4 grandchildren, and I'm even more concerned about that. And that is what started me in this process, as well as many issues that I've gone through with my children. But throughout all of that, I started really listening to what people were saying and understanding that their concerns were the cashless bail and the crime and the not being able to afford to live here. And so many issues started popping up that I said, you know, I lived through this too. I can make a difference here. I've been through enough to know what people are feeling. So I decided to jump back in, and here I am.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Life experiences often guide us to a cause, and I understand that it has been the case for you. When your daughter, who was on the spectrum, was not given the proper services she needed in school, you took action. Can you tell me about this?
Yes, I can. She was diagnosed at the end of 1992 to 1993 with nonverbal autism, and really nobody knew what to do or how to go about doing it. She's now 34 years old. We had to start from scratch and figure out through the system what we were going to do to educate her. And there was not very much out there. The local newspaper did an article on her and our journey. And within 24 to 48 hours of that article coming out, I had upwards of 200 calls from families in Westchester County who were going through the same thing.
That's crazy.
Very crazy. And that's when we realized this was bigger than what we imagined. And as you can see, we're now, I believe the number now is like 1 in 50. It might even be more than that right now. it really was an epidemic that was starting in the community and actually the country, because once it started to open up, we really started seeing the true numbers. So I started to fight for her rights at the school age level. She was 3 years old, so we were in the early preschool years. I read a book that was about applied behavior analysis and the great outcomes they were having with it. And I contacted the author, and and she guided me through a lot of things. And my journey of fighting for my daughter began. And it took about 20 months, but she was the first child in New York State to get 40 hours of applied behavior analysis paid for in the house. And it was miraculous. Then from that point forward, I joined forces with 6 other families, and all of us together created the Devereux Millwood Learning Center, and a very proud venture that was, because it really started to open up to the world that our children can get help. They don't have a destiny of not
stuck.
moving. Right, they're
Yeah.
not stuck. They're moving forward. So now, currently, she's 34 and she lives in a group home in Ossining, and that group home is based on applied behavior analysis. And to my knowledge, that is the first house in New York State for adults that was created with ABA. So the fighting never stops for disabilities, and that is a huge passion for me and my family, to make sure the disabled get what they need. And for some reason, we always seem to cut in that area.
It seems like it was a very tremendous undertaking. And
was.
you should be very proud,
Thank
That's
you.
a really amazing story.
Thank you so much. It was all worth it. Still is.
What I find remarkable about you is your capacity to still be a force for change, even in the face of tragedy. I cannot begin to imagine what you experienced, especially that I'm a mother myself. Can you tell us about the foundation you set up after the death of your son?
Sure. My son, Jimmy, was diagnosed with brain cancer at the age of 4. He passed away at the age of 6. And he was a force to be reckoned with in the community. Everybody loved Jimmy Boy. He brought a presence to the world that I'm just happy I had for 6 years. And I am blessed that he chose me as his mother. After he passed away, we had an abundance of funds left over that was donated to our family to help us with all our bills and things like that. So we took those funds and we started a foundation called Just Imagine Making Miracles Yours, and that's the Jimmy Foundation. It helps other families with their financial burdens. So if they needed a month of mortgage paid, or if they needed gas cards, or if they needed food cards, whatever way we could have helped to give back the way things were given to us, we would pay it forward, so to speak. And we really are very proud of that organization.
I noticed you admire former President Teddy Roosevelt. I have to admit I had to do a little bit of research on Teddy Roosevelt, and I was amazed at the similarities between you and him. Roosevelt, a resident of New York, championed his square deal, which essentially called for fairness to all citizens. In 1881, Roosevelt won election to New York State Assembly, in which Roosevelt was able to expose the corruption in Albany. Sounds very familiar with what's going on right now.
Yeah.
What do you see as the corrupting elements in politics today that you will be fighting?
I think the biggest issue we have is there's no balance. There's a supermajority, and in order to have effective government, you have to have a balance. And without that balance, that supermajority makes all the rules. And as we can see what's happening in New York State, People are leaving. We have crime issues. We have financial issues. The taxes are through the roof. We're not being heard 100%. And when you have balance, you get that back and forth, let's keep things level situation. And that's not there right now.
I agree. Absolutely. Also, Teddy Roosevelt was famously regarded as a conservationist. I also noticed that protecting the environment is one of your platforms. What do you see as the greatest threat to the environment currently?
I'm really having a child with autism. There's always been discussion how food plays a role in that. And I truly believe that pesticides and chemicals are a root cause of what's happening to our food supply. You just take a look at glyphosate. I'm pretty sure I'm saying it correctly, which is in Roundup. That was introduced as a way to kill weeds, but they also found that it was a way to make the wheat work faster to bloom and close down and then be able to utilize it quicker to create flour. Now, when you look at that and you look at the timing of that, that's about, in my eyes, this is a personal opinion, you start to see the intolerance of gluten at about the same time. So it makes me question what's happening to our food industry. I believe, too, that non-GMO products are what we should be consuming because those chemicals obviously are dangerous to our bodies. And when one chemical mixes, 15 other chemicals are created, at least. So I really think we need to get back to basics when it comes to how we handle our crops and our food. So to me, environmentally, and not just that, these things also kill our bees, our birds, the things that are needed to pollinate.
To sustain life and the food supply. Yeah.
And I think there are simple things that people can be doing at home. I have a beehive, and I'm trying to learn how to do bees. I have chickens, and I'm just trying, and I have a garden, and I'm just trying to be proactive in my own life to hopefully make a difference for the future.
Right. I could say professionally, there's definitely an uptick in lymphoma cases.
Yes.
We see it all the time. People being newly diagnosed with lymphoma, and I think being exposed to these type of chemicals are definitely contributing to that.
Yes.
Absolutely,
there's a lot of proof that these chemicals, PFOAs too.
Yeah,
same thing.
They're saying that this generation is probably not going to outlive their parents' generation because of all the harmful chemicals that are in our food. So,
right. I don't know how many people remember this. Excuse me. But when I was a kid, there was a gypsy moth invasion. I think it was the late 70s, early 80s. And they were eating everything off the trees and people freaking out. So they started doing this spraying program. And I will never forget my neighbor, who was one of the sprayers, came to my house with my dad. We were all outside while he was spraying all this stuff all over the trees. We were running around and playing. And now I look back and I'm like, how crazy is that?
Yeah.
That had to have some kind of an effect. The gypsy moths were gone.
Right. I think there were also airplanes that used to do the, spray. I think it was DET.
Yeah, well,
and kids would just run run through the field or like the trucks that would be spraying something.
Even West Nile, that first year of West Nile, when they were spraying.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yep.
What other politicians from history do you admire, and what qualities do you think made them good leaders?
I adore Abraham Lincoln. I can't get enough history on him. I think he just led with such compassion for other people. And I would love to, I wish I could be back in time to have met him and hear him. And actually, strangely enough, in first grade, that was my first book report, was on Abraham Lincoln. So, and I remember it. I clearly remember learning about him, and that was first grade. Yeah, he really just took care of people and wanted to make sure everybody had a wholesome, good life.
Right, regardless of their where they stood in society, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. It was about the people and making sure everybody had a fair shot. And yeah, I adore him.
Right. That like the Constitution, right? Pursuit of happiness. Everyone
Yes.
has the right to that.
Yes,
Yeah.
and the American dream.
Yes. We revealed on this show that the governor's fire working group that was set up to investigate the 3 best fires in 2023 did not test for hydrogen fluoride, a gas released by the fires. HF, hydrogen fluoride, is an OSHA-regulated contaminant that can easily be tested for. OSHA is a member of the governor's fire working group. If you became the senator for District 40, how would you address this issue that they didn't report this finding?
I think my first question would be, why? If this is part of the OSHA regulations or standards to test for it, why wasn't it there? There has to be a reason. And why isn't anybody coming forward and telling us
Right.
why?
Right. In my opinion, I think for them to omit that, it just pushes their agenda. They know that this is highly toxic. It's released in large quantities. It doesn't fit their narrative. So let's omit it from being tested or, releasing the findings of this so we can continue down this road of green energy, right? They
Right.
want to push their agenda, in my opinion.
Right. And based on that, on a personal level, then why is there OSHA?
Right.
I mean, OSHA is an important investigative organization, and you have to comply with them for many things. I find it baffling that they didn't have to measure this,
Right.
and why, and I think that an investigation into why it was not part of their testing is warranted.
Right, right. I agree. It's very troubling in my opinion. As mentioned earlier, you have been active in opposing the 116 megawatt BESS facility proposed on Miller Road in Mayapack. Mm-hmm. What do you see as some of the main problems with this proposal of this facility?
Well, I think the number one for me when I got involved was the fact that local control was being
Overlooked
and challenged. I know that my opponent did a bill. I think it's 7834.
Yeah.
That's correct, right?
Yes.
That was pulled back, but that would have eliminated the local control, and the decision making would have been removed from the people and the town to make the decision on this particular facility. That is when I really learned about what was going on and started to get involved. People were coming to me and saying, "Did you know that this is going on?" And I started paying attention. And then I started listening to the research and the things that people were finding out, and realized that there is a 1 mile radius around the BESS structure that would be evacuated. And then outside of that 1 mile, another 4 mile radius, which would total the 5 miles around the BESS facility, would shelter in place. And I looked at the map and I did the radius and found out I was 4.8 miles. Okay, so I'm at the tip, but I'd have to shelter in place.
Yeah.
So that's really where I started to get involved and get concerned, because I know the dangers that I don't know. I'm learning the dangers based on what this great group has been doing and bringing this stuff to the forefront of how dangerous this facility can be.
Right. So there was recently in Escondido, California, there was a battery facility that went on fire, and that community as well had to evacuate. And I think there's been thousands of people that have evacuate from the location. And they're saying that this is really an absolute danger to humans. So my heart goes out to that community because that's absolutely terrifying, in my opinion.
Well, I think it's terrifying for us to watch, but also what's more terrifying is that it could be here.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to see anybody go through something like that. And
we have daycare centers, and we have schools, and we have senior care centers, and this is a highly residential area, and this is what's going to, when this will happen, when and if this happens.
People don't realize the things that you have to think about. And one of the things I have to think about all the time is my daughter who's in a group home. How will I get to her if there's some kind of an issue? And that's something I think of constantly because she's my child.
Yeah.
And I worry about that.
Right. And I'll be at work and my kids will be at the daycare.
Right.
It's a very scary situation.
Mm-hmm.
So a key issue that comes to mind that can't be overlooked in this possibility of this facility is vandalism or some criminal activity that could pose a threat to the security of the battery facility. Your opponent, Peter Harcum, has authored bail reform, in which bail reform has led to the rise in crime for the state of New York. What is bail reform exactly, and what are your thoughts about it?
Well, bail reform was created, I want to say 4 years ago. I'm pretty sure it's about 4 years ago. And my opponent is one of the authors of it. And it's cashless bail. So basically, if you were to be arrested, you would go and be arraigned. You would not have to pay bail, and you would be let out the same day usually. Actually, in a lot of cases that we follow, it's a few hours. And then the criminal is let out and more than likely does recommit a crime. And this becomes a very secular activity. So it's very concerning. And in my eyes, it needs to be repealed. And we need to have better discussions about our bail system. The way it is right now, it's not working for us.
Right. It's protecting the criminal, not the citizen, the innocent citizens, right?
Exactly.
Right. Makes no sense to me, personally.
No. And we're trying to stick to common sense, and I don't know where it keeps going.
Yeah. There is currently a 6-month moratorium in place for the Mahopac lithium battery facility. However, there is a fear that if the facility is actually constructed and connected to a renewable energy source, the Rapid Act would be applicable, eliminating local control. Has the current Senator, Peter Harcum, addressed his constituents' concerns over the BESS facility and this possibility?
Not to my knowledge as of yet. I haven't heard. I've heard people asking for him to, but I have not heard that he's addressed them.
I personally haven't seen him at any meetings or any strolls that we have. I have never met him, to be honest with you. And my fear is that, come January, hopefully, you're going to win. But, his plan is, right, he just wanted to appease the people, the community. But if he was to get in January, he's just going to do whatever he wants to do. He wants to push that agenda. He's going to push that agenda. It's a re-election, right? He's up for re-election. It's all game, really.
If you take a look at a lot of history, there's a lot of flip-flopping. So he'll come in and tell the people what they want to hear. I'm going to do this and this and this and this. And then I've heard countless times of people saying, then he goes back and he votes the way he wants.
Right.
So people should be aware of that and take the warning.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I moved here a year ago. I had no idea who anyone was. And, I had a blank slate. And I'm just saying, this really it formed my opinion of who to vote for New York State Senate for District 40.
Well, thank you.
Yes. Thank you. So, what are your thoughts on the Rapid Act, and why do you see preserving home rule as important to the people of New York?
I think we live in communities, and this was set up this way on purpose, so that the people, because we live in a free country, the people have the final say of what goes on in their community. And I think it's very important, because if something like this is to go in, we won't have control over when something actually does happen. And by having local control, we are pushing the limits on it to say, no, we don't want it here. We're talking about residential area. We're talking about businesses within a mile radius. God only knows how many businesses that would be affected. Schools being shut down, daycares being shut down. The people have a say, and they should have a say. And there are many topics that have come to the forefront by my opponent concerning local control. It's not just this issue. So I feel that we have to make that a priority to preserve and not let people tell us what's going to happen in our own communities.
Right. And it actually infringes on Article 9 of the New York State Constitution.
It does. Mm-hmm.
Right. So it just disregards that. Yeah, I think people know what's best for themselves.
Yes, they
Why
do.
should someone from upstate in Albany tell you how you should live your life?
Right. Well, again, those two words, common sense. Common sense is we live in a free country. Let me live my life the way I see fit.
Right.
Don't start telling me how to live it.
Right. That's what makes America
And
America.
Right. And that goes for a lot of issues, not just this issue.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. While we are on green energy, do you support the mandate to transition school buses to electric school buses?
No.
Okay. What do you see problems with this mandate?
I see a lot higher cost to the taxpayer. I see dangerous situations for children on school buses because we don't know when these batteries are going to turn into a fire, and you're going to have kids on buses. I just think we're not ready for this technology as of yet. And to be pushing it so hard is not the answer. And everybody's got to take everybody's safety into concern first. And I really think pushing this is a very bad choice.
I agree. And as we mentioned in the previous episode, that these types of buses, the electric buses, were assessed in Florida. So it doesn't account for our conditions up here in Putnam County or Westchester County.
Well, and listen, we learned, I think it was last year in Chicago, when the temperature dropped below a certain temperature, they couldn't charge them.
Right.
So the good old days of no school for snowstorms is going to now be no school because the buses wouldn't work.
Yeah.
So
seems ridiculous.
it does.
Yeah.
It does.
So the state also wants to mandate trucks to be zero emission by 2035. Mm-hmm. How will switching from diesel to electric trucks affect the consumer?
Oh, it's a trickle-down effect, totally. Because the prices are going to go up with the electric vehicles. You're going to stress the grid, which is going to make the electricity go up. And then it's going to trickle down into your food prices, into your probably your gasoline prices too. It's just going to have an impact on everything. And not only that, they can't run like a diesel fuel truck can run.
It's only good for 100 miles per charge.
Right. So you're talking about where's the infrastructure to make sure these trucks are being charged in every 100 miles.
Right.
Like that.
And if they were to have
That's crazy.
be in an accident, right?
Right.
And it explodes, so
Right.
that supply chain is going to be affected as well.
Well, and that supply chain, and then you have to have extra training for fire departments because you're battling a totally different kind of fire.
Yeah.
And fire departments need a lot of education in this area because this is new.
Right. Yeah, it's a different way to mitigate
And
the
trying
problem.
to save people if the thing catches on fire.
Seems like a disaster to me. Very.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here, if you run out of electricity on the highway, who's bringing you a can of electricity?
Right.
Doesn't exist.
So I'm going to completely switch gears for a second. I have noticed signs around the surrounding area that in particularly says Save Girl Sports. This
Yes.
seems like a logical concept to me. Could you tell me about that?
So, girls' sports, there's a mandate that the Board of Regents is discussing to make all girls and boys sports one sport. So a boy would be able, like, say there's not a boys field hockey team, and they want to join the girls field hockey team. They will be able to bump a girl.
Take her position.
Yes, because it would be based on the athletic ability.
Yeah.
And you're talking, these girls have worked so hard. I have 6 daughters. They work hard to
Obtain that position, right?
Right. And there's scholarships involved, and there's so many things involved for girls. And then to just, with a swipe of a pen, just say, okay, well, no, now you're all going to be equal. No, they're not equal. We all know that boys are bigger and stronger. That's just the way it is. Biologically. That's the way life is.
Yeah.
And for us to think any different, shame on us.
Right. People are going to get hurt. Girls are going to get hurt.
Yeah. And as a mother of daughters, they should be given every opportunity that there is.
Yeah, fair opportunity.
Yeah.
And then, with that extra athleticism, they can actually probably take the scholarships that maybe have been promised to these girls.
Yep. Well, and a lot of girls go into sports because they love the sport, but they also go in hoping that they're going to work hard enough to be that person. And then all of a sudden, if she gets bumped, how devastating.
Yeah.
All
that dedication, that commitment.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have to stand up for our girls.
Definitely.
They need us.
Definitely.
Just because I'm a girl, I have a little
bias. It's just what's right.
I have a little bias. I was a softball player. I loved playing softball.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, like you said, it comes back to working hard and being acknowledged for it.
Right. Absolutely. Then there's no incentive.
Right.
Is there anything else you want to tell us about your campaign?
No, I think we touched on the basic issues of what's going on the campaign. I think I would just say people need to research and people need to understand what's going on. We are in a very dire situation across this state of people leaving, people not being able to afford to live here. And the time has come that we have to fight for our state. And I ask everyone to join together to fight for that state and make some changes because we need change in New York.
Right. Even maybe crossing the party line, to do the right thing, to preserve the state.
Yes. Listen, bringing balance back is a priority. And without balance, we're going to be in a severe situation.
Right.
And when listen, my opponent's been in there for 6 years. I ran 2 years ago. I'm sitting here talking about the same issues that he promised he was going to fix. And here I am 2 years later, still talking about them.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
Right.
You know what? Give somebody else a chance. If you're not going to take care of the people and be boots on the ground with them and do what's right, then
step aside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Move on.
Yeah.
Because the people are asking for help and it's not being delivered.
Right. And people are moving out of the state in droves.
Right.
I just want to do a quick public service announcement. Election day is November 5th. However, early voting is also encouraged. Please get out there and vote. This is really a crucial election, both on the local, state level and on the national level. Changes start locally. Please visit Gina's website where you can read about her, the values she stands for, and the issues she wants to address to restore common sense to New York. Thank you, Gina, for giving us your time. and continuously supporting the community in your fight against the lithium battery facility.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a real pleasure being here. Thank you.
Thank you. Please leave us your comments, like and subscribe, share the video, and let's spread the word. Thank you for watching the podcast, It's Not Easy Being Green.